Thank you everybody for coming tonight. As Ashley said, my name is Bridget Betts. I'm the director of the Student Financial Assistance Office. This presentation is one that we gave at Minor Welcome Bash. So if you attended that event last month, you might have already seen this. But what we're hoping to do tonight is give you a little bit more information about each of our offices and some things you need to know in order to prepare for the bill that you're going to receive soon, and making sure that your financial aid disperses in a timely manner. So go ahead and get started. All right, so first I want to talk about what the role of our offices are. So for the financial aid office, our responsibility is to make sure that we are providing you with any kind of resources that you might need as a student in order to fund your education, to help get you through while you are a student here, making sure that you can afford your college expenses. What that means then is that we are creating financial aid packages, and we're putting together financial aid for you in terms of scholarships and grants and work study and loans and things like that. Different sources and different types of aid, all put together to help you fund your education. With that, because our funding comes from a variety of different sources, we are required also to maintain federal, state, and university regulations and policies. And so what that means is that sometimes from our office, you're going to receive some communications or maybe receive some kind of information from us that is more legalese, is really related to our compliance in certain areas. And so sometimes financial aid can seem a little bit scary, but what I'm hoping that you gain from tonight is that we really are here to help you in every way possible. So even though we are required to send some of those kind of regulatory communications to you, we are here for you. And so if after tonight you do have more questions about your financial aid, you'll have plenty of opportunities to do that and get that taken care of. All right. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the average cost of attendance. You've probably seen this if you came to visit campus at any point for this upcoming fall 23 or spring 24 semester or age year. We are a state institution, so you will see we have different tuition rates for in-state students, so those coming from Missouri and those coming from out of state, or if you're coming to us from internationally. Those will fall under the out-of-state resident rates. So you can see our tuition for a Missouri resident for one academic year would be an estimated $13,000 for a freshman, and an out-of-state student would be $30,400. Now, we do have a flat tuition rate. So if you are taking 12 to 18 credit hours per semester, no matter how many credits you're taking in that range, your rate is going to be that same amount there. The rate I'm showing you for tuition is the flat rate for a freshman. A freshman is defined as somebody who has either less than 30 credit hours, or you're coming in after high school and this is your first semester. So even if you are bringing in from maybe dual credit or something like that, more than 30 credit hours, at least for your first semester, you're going to be receiving the freshman rate. Now, if you are bringing in less than 30 credit hours, you'll receive that freshman rate until you reach your 30 credit hours. At that point, your tuition is going to be based on your major, and you can find more information on our website there. And I did provide a QR code. You can snap a picture of that and see what the rates might be based on your major in future years. You will also see some required fees, and these include activity facility fees and health service fees. And those fees contribute to your activities and your well-being while you're here on campus. And so those are required fees that you are also going to see in your bill. And then the housing and dining rate that you see here is a weighted average of all of our different options. So you probably noticed that there are different housing options and different dining options. And so this is a weighted average for all of our incoming freshman students as they are in their first year here. And so your housing and dining costs might actually be a little bit different depending on what meal plan you chose or what dorm you chose. Also, if you are living in fraternity or sorority, they do not bill through the university. They will bill you directly, and their cost may be, of course, a little bit different than this as well. So, but this is just to help you kind of plan on how you might afford your education moving forward. Now, as I mentioned, these are the direct costs. That means these are what could be billed to you. There are other costs that you need to consider and you can use financial aid for, and those include personal needs and transportation, which includes how often you're going to travel back and forth from home or how much you will travel around Rolla. And from a survey if we do of our students, they say they spend about $2,600 a year in those personal needs and those transportation costs. So if you need financial assistance to help cover those, that's kind of what you're going to be budgeting there. And then on average, our students say they spend about $800, $900 in books each year. So again, depending on what major you're in and what classes you'll be in, that will also determine what your book cost will be. All right, now we're going to get into the fun money part. When you were admitted to the university, you were considered for merit-based scholarships. I have freshman merit-based scholarships here, but if we have any transfer students included, you were also considered for a transfer merit scholarship. The majority of these scholarships are renewable. If you are a freshman, they're renewable for 8 semesters or 4 years. And for transfers, they are 4 semesters or 2 years. Both require a cumulative GPA of a 3.0 at the end of each academic year in order to renew to the next year. For freshmen, if you were offered a groundbreaker scholarship package, please know that package could be made up of a variety of different funds. And so you probably saw in the last week that your groundbreaker scholarship has been transformed into possibly a Missouri S&T scholarship and maybe some other named funds from some of our generous donors. So the groundbreaker package was something we offered at the beginning, but it is made up of a variety of funds, but the amount will stay the same as long as it renews between all those funds that we've offered you. We awarded based on the ACT or SAT test through June. So if you did not send us for freshmen, if you did not send us your latest ACT or SAT, make sure you do so. So we have that June test that we can consider. And we also looked at your highest super score. So if you didn't send us your super score, now's a good time to do that, just so you maximize your merit-based scholarships. We also offer federal and state aid, which will include grants and loans. In order to receive federal and state aid, you must have applied for or completed the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. The FAFSA is not a required application, but we do encourage it, especially if you do think that you might need to borrow any kind of student loans, because it may be required for those. If you haven't done it, I encourage you to go ahead and get it done. You can do it at any time. We typically get FAFSAs within 1 to 2 business days, and then we're able to offer aid within a week after that. Generally, the FAFSA opens up October 1 each year. So for 23-24 that we're entering here next month, it opened up October 1, 2022. And we have a priority deadline of February 1. So if you filed by then, you were considered for as much financial aid as we could offer. If you file after February 1, if funding is remaining, you would still be considered at that point too. The state of Missouri, for their need-based aid program, also requires a February 1 also has a February 1 priority deadline. So you meet ours, you meet theirs, you're good to go. So that would be 2 dates I would encourage you to, in the future, to put on your calendar. If you are going to file the FAFSA, I would encourage you to do it every year, and it'll be open usually October 1 and then priority deadline of February 1. Now, the 24-25 FAFSA is going to be a little bit different, and it's only for this next year. And that is because the FAFSA is changing, and because there are so many different changes that will be happening with the FAFSA, the Department of Education is a little bit delayed. And so they anticipate December timeframe where that will be available. I don't necessarily believe it'll be December 1, it'll be sometime in December 2023. But as we know more, we will absolutely share with families. So you're aware of that. So here are the types of financial aid that we try to offer all students. The first is going to be free money. This is money that you don't have to pay back, and those usually come in the form of scholarships and grants. So scholarships would normally be based on your merit, how well you did in high school, maybe how well you did in college, and how well you do here at S&T. But it could also be based on your talent. So maybe you received some athletic scholarships, or maybe you're receiving some other type of talent funding. Grants generally then are based on your income or your family's income, and that generally means that if it's based on your income, you're going to need to file the FAFSA. So in order to be considered for the grants, for instance, that I've listed here, the FAFSA is required for that. The first grant we look at is the federal Pell Grant. If you qualify for that based on your family income on the FAFSA, that's considered an entitlement program, and that's the amount that you're going to receive for that year. And you will receive that no matter what other type of aid that you receive. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, which is a complete mouthful, is usually shortened to FSEOG or SEOG, and that amount is awarded to students who are Pell Grant eligible. And each institution has a different pot of money awarded to them to give out to students. And so we award it to those who file by February 1 until we run out of that funding. Access Missouri is the state of Missouri's need-based aid program. And so in order to have qualified for that, you would have had to file the FAFSA by February 1, be a Missouri resident. But unlike Pell and SEOG, which usually goes to the lowest family income, Access Missouri does go a little bit further from low to middle income families. So I do encourage you, a lot of times I hear families say, well, I'm not going to file the FAFSA, we're not going to get anything. If you are in the state of Missouri and you do think that you maybe fall in that middle income range, I do encourage you to file the FAFSA to see if you might qualify for that in future years. We also offer earned money, which is money that students have to work for, and that comes in the form of federal or institutional work study. Typically, the work study is need-based, so it does go first to those who file by February 1 and have the lowest income until we run out of funding. And what that award is we offer you a certain amount of money, and it would have been in your financial aid package. And then when you get to campus, you will work in a job up to 20 hours a week, and you will earn a paycheck. That money goes directly to the student every 2 weeks, and they can either use it to pay their bill or they can use it for some of their personal expenses. Once the student earns up to the amount that we offered, then they stop working for that year. If they don't work enough to earn up to that amount, they only receive how much they worked for. If you weren't offered work study and you are interested in it, the student needs to email our office at sfa@mst.edu and ask to be put on the wait list. We will process the wait list. We have already begun processing the wait list as funding becomes available so that we can get students started working as quickly as possible. And then last will be borrowed money. So this will be money that we offer to you as a student or the parent, and then you eventually pay it back to whoever is the source of that funding. So this would include all direct student loans. So you may have seen a subsidized or unsubsidized loan on your financial aid package. And those loans are available to everybody who is eligible to file a FAFSA. And the amount that you're eligible for is dependent on your academic level and your dependency status on the FAFSA. So most of you are considered dependent students. And if you are a freshman, the most that a dependent freshman can receive is $5,500 a year. So most likely that's what you see on your financial aid offer between those direct loans that might have been offered to you. Then we also offer university loans to help make up the difference until we run out of funding in those areas. All right. The next piece of aid, or another piece of aid that I want to focus on, is any scholarships that you might receive. So once you've been admitted, you've been considered for your merit-based scholarships, we then have a scholarship database at scholarships.mst.edu. And this is a scholarship database that has all the other scholarships on campus, all the ones through the financial aid office, all the ones through the academic departments, and at this point, over 12,000 scholarships from external sources as well. You would want to, I would encourage you, if you haven't been in here, that you get in here and apply for additional scholarships. And when you go to scholarships.mst.edu, you're going to use your user ID and password that you use to get into Joe's. And you will be asked a series of questions. You can ask, or you can answer as few or as many as you want. The more you answer, the more the more scholarships you might be matched to. So I do encourage you to go in every once in a while and see if there might be any scholarships for you to apply to. And I do encourage you to do that frequently, because as new funding becomes available, we will be awarding from those pools. Now, we did start awarding February 1, so at this point, a lot of scholarships have been awarded. However, as funding becomes available, we will continue to award to whoever is in the pool at that time. So if you didn't apply by February 1st, you still have an opportunity. We would encourage you to get in there and make sure that you are counted. Now, if you already filed your FAFSA, you should have got a financial aid offer letter from us in the mail, a paper letter, and it came with a financial aid offer letter guide, which is this green pamphlet. On the front of that handout is a financial aid checklist of things for you to start working on for whatever pieces of aid that you might have in your awards. That way, you make sure that your aid will disperse without any issue when we start dispersing in August. Now, if you find in your financial aid offer letter that the financial aid is not necessarily enough to cover your bill whenever that becomes available, you do have the ability. There are some other loan options that you might consider. The first is a Parent Plus loan option, which is a federal loan in the parent's name and based on the parent's credit. You can borrow up to the remainder of the cost of attendance, but just know that if you borrow this loan, the student has no responsibility to pay it back. It is all on the parent. You can have it deferred up to 4 years, but you do have to request that when you apply for it. You would have to do an application and credit check, and you can find that at studentaid.gov. You also have the ability to do a private student loan. This would be a credit-based loan also in the student's name and based on the student's credit. And usually students have little to no credit, and so you may need a cosigner, and then it will be based on the cosigner's credit as well. We do have a preferred lender list on our website, and I've provided that link here. These are a list of lenders we know provide good customer service to our students, and that we have a good volume from our students. They're the ones that they borrow from most frequently. However, you are not required to pick one of these. If you have another one in mind that you've used in the past, you can certainly apply with them as well. I do encourage you to make sure you're checking that financial aid checklist. And we did send emails out this week with other the full list of items that you might want to start working on in order to make sure your aid is in order. For instance, one of the things on that list is if you are going to borrow a direct student loan, you will need to complete the master promissory note and entrance counseling, which are both good for 10 years. So in the future, you'll just file the FAFSA and accept the loan, any loan amount that you choose to accept in future years, and you wouldn't have to do this promissory note entrance counseling in the future, but it is required of all new borrowers. Email, Missouri S&T email is the official communication of the institution. So now that if you are an enrolled student, this is how the financial aid office and all other offices on campus are going to be communicating with you. And it's going to be to the student's S&T email. In the future, parents, you most likely will not receive additional communications. It is going to be to the student. So it is important that you have looked at your S&T email and that you are reviewing it frequently. And as I mentioned, we did start sending quite a few emails out this week. So please make sure at least this month and next month that you are paying attention to it daily or every other day to make sure that you're not missing out on anything. I talked about JOES, and so if you've enrolled, you've already been here. This is joes.mst.edu, but what I'm going to show you is how to accept your financial aid from here forward. When you log into JOES, you're going to see a financial aid tile. We have our own tile. And in here, if you click on that, it's going to give you different options, which include view financial aid and accept decline awards. If you want to go ahead and process through the aid that you've been offered and determine which aid you want to accept or decline, now's a good time to do it. Not right now while we're talking, but after we are done with the webinar. When you go to accept decline awards, it's going to show you the age years that are available. And as you move further along in your career here at S&T, you're going to see more than one age year listed, but most of you are new students. And so you should only see 2024 at this time, unless maybe you're enrolled for summer, and then you might see 2023. But for fall 23, your aid is going to be in age year 2024. So when you get in here, you're going to see your financial aid offered here. On the left-hand side, you're going to see it all listed with links. There are blue hyperlinks that will, if you click on it, it will give you more information about that particular award if you're not familiar with it. It'll also show you if it's a loan, a scholarship, a grant, or a work study, in case the description was not clear. And it'll also show you how much has been offered to you in the offered column. You will see most scholarships and grants have been accepted on your behalf because we assume you want that free money, with the exception of private scholarships that you might have reported to us. You may see a private scholarship is offered and not accepted, and you won't be able to accept it in JOES. And this is because we leave it out there as an offer, so it does go towards your bill, but we do not accept it until we actually get the funds from the donor. So once we get that check, we'll mark it as accepted for you and move forward. Anything else that's out there that's offered but not accepted, you do need to make a decision at some point, not necessarily now, but some point in this next semester, you need to decide whether you need to accept that aid, reduce it, or decline it. If you click accept, it's going to open up the opportunity. If it's a loan, it's going to open up that opportunity for you to change the amount if you don't like if you want to reduce the amount that's been offered to you. The amount that's been offered is the maximum amount that we can offer, and we're required to offer that to you. But that's not necessarily what you need or what we would encourage you to borrow. You want to borrow as little as you need, and not more than that. And so if you click accept, you can choose how much you want to borrow at that point in a reduction amount. Just know that these offers are for the age year, so fall and spring, split evenly between the two semesters. So if you are just wanting to accept a certain amount for just one semester, you will need to contact our office so that we can adjust that for you, and then you'll be able to go in there and accept it for just that one semester. Otherwise, if you reduce it, let's say instead of $5,500, you only wanted to accept $4,000. If you choose if you wanted to maybe accept $2,000 just for the fall semester, if you change that to $2,000, it'll actually split $1,000 for fall, $1,000 for spring, and won't actually do what you're expecting. So if you do want one term, make sure you contact us. Once you've done everything you need to do on this page, make sure you hit submit. And then on the next page, hit OK or submit. If you do not complete those two submit OK buttons, you won't have locked in your awards, and so it won't be applied to your bill at that point. If you do have private scholarships that you got maybe from a high school awards night or something like that, maybe you don't have the money yet, but you know you're getting it, I encourage you to log into Joe's and report your outside scholarships. All you have to do is label it private scholarship number 1 for fall or spring, or both, if it's going to be split between the 2 semesters. Tell us what the amount or the name of it is and how much it is for each semester, and then save. What that will do is that within 1 to 2 business days, we'll take that amount that you put in there and we will mark it, or we will put it on your financial aid package as private scholarship number 1, 2, 3, whatever you labeled it as. And then that will count towards your bill. Then when you get the private scholarship check, or if the donor asks you where to send it, they all come to the financial aid office. Even if it comes to you, it's still, you need to send it to the financial aid office. Sometimes the donor will send it to or pay to the order of Missouri S&T, but sometimes they pay to the order of the student. If they do pay to the order of the student, that still comes to S&T and you do not need to endorse a check. We have a stamp that will cover that, that action, and we will post it to your account for you. We start dispersing financial aid 8 to 10 days before the first day of class. In the fall semester, it is 10 days before. So if class starts on August 21st, our first fall disbursement is August 11th. So you want to make sure you get everything done that we sent to you in an email prior to August 11th so that you don't have any issues with your aid. I would encourage you to watch your financial aid and make sure that on your bill, it moves from anticipated aid, meaning it's out there as anticipated, we anticipate it's going to disperse, that it moves from anticipated to credit. And Caitlin will talk more about that on the bill. If for some reason you don't see that aid moves, please contact our office because it might mean that you haven't done something you need to do in order to let it pay. The one exception to this is the state aid, so Bright Flight and Access. State of Missouri does not send us the money until the beginning of September, and so it won't pay until we get that money. So just know that those automatically won't disperse on the first disbursement day, but everything else should. I've talked about a lot of information, and all of that is on our website at sfa.mst.edu. So if you haven't been out there, I encourage you to do so. When you do go out there, you're going to find a contact us button. And so you can see here, we do have 2 financial aid counselors assigned to students by their last name. Dean Garrick has the first half of the alphabet and Valerie Murch has the second. So if you do have any questions after tonight's webinar, they are a good resource for you. Last thing I'm going to suggest is that you set up additional authorized access or AAA and a FERPA release for any parent or loved one that you might be hoping will talk with us on your behalf. Once a student is enrolled, we are prohibited from sharing most information with you, with your parents and loved ones. So it's very important that you do grant them access. And you can find this in Joe's on the personal information tab in the information privacy section. AAA gives your parent or loved one the ability to go in and they'll have their own login to a parent or guest login where they can see certain information in Joe's for the information that you grant them. FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, if you grant FERPA permission, that allows us to talk to your parent or loved one on the phone. And so you will need to make sure that you are, the person who is contacting us is calling from the number that you provide in that setup. If you do not have this set up, most of what we can tell you is just generic information, or tell your parent and loved one, and they will most likely will have to give us a call back or reach out to us a second time. So go ahead and get that set up before you move forward. Okay, so now I'm going to give control to Caitlin, and she's going to go over the role of the cashier's office and the billing process.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Kelly, and I'm the director in Cashiers and Student Loan Collections. And I'm going to go over just exactly what the cashier's office will be handling for your students on their accounts. So the cashier's office handles the collection and the assessment of student tuition fees, The billing, we also are the ones that will be processing all the payments, and we will also be the office that will be issuing any type of refunds off the student accounts. So the billing statements are provided electronically. Once the student gets, it's just an email notification that goes out. The actual bill itself is not emailed to the students. It's just a notification. In that notification, it has a link that the students can click into to be able to log in to Joe's or proceed to Touchnet to view the billing statement each month. The billing is always run around the 10th. Around the 15th of every month is when the billing statement generates, and the due date is always the 10th of the following month. To view the bills is a pretty easy process. It's just a matter of the student just has to log on to Joe's. They'll go to the Student Center tile and then click Financial Account. And then on the left-hand side, there'll be an area that says Proceed to Touchnet. When you click Proceed to Touchnet, that should generate a pop-up window allowing you to do your single sign-on onto Touchnet. Do realize that you will need to make sure that the browser that you're using allows pop-ups, because it is a pop-up window. If you don't, then it will block the window from appearing, and you'll just sit on the same screen and believing no action is actually occurring. So you need to make sure to disable the pop-up blocker on the browser to make sure that you're able to get to the Touchnet screens. And the students can grant their parents or spouses or anybody else that they want to additional authorized access to be able to view the same billing information along with receiving those same email communications when those bills generate each month. The billing due dates for the fall. Sorry, technical difficulties. For the fall, we've got 4. Same thing for the spring, and then for the summer we have 3. So for this first fall bill, it will be due August 10th. We do plan on generating, usually the bills are generated around the 15th of every month, like I said earlier. This term, we are starting with a new tuition structure. So there's been some testing that we've been having to do. So there is some delay, a little bit of a slight delay with some of those bills for this very first, for this first bill for the fall term. We plan to try to generate the bills on Monday. But if we run into any problems, it could be middle of next week or possibly end of next week. So just be aware of that and the timing. But we are shooting for generating the first fall bill on Monday. So just be aware of watching for those email communications next week about the billing statements. Okay, so whenever you first log in to Touchnet, this is the home screen that you can expect to see on Touchnet. You'll see once you go to Student Center, Financial Account, Proceed to Touchnet, this is where you'll land. On the left-hand side there is where we'll have announcements. We do change our announcements periodically throughout the year, depending on what's going on that time of year. A great example is whenever we're generating the 1098T statements around January, we'll put some special announcements out there about the 1098T tax statements. We may have other things out there before the first fall bill generates, just things like that that we think that maybe the students or parents need to be aware of that are special announcements throughout the year. At the very top, you'll see that you have My Account, Make Payments, Refunds. The middle of the screen, you'll see where it says Balance, and then it has that 0 amount. If you click on either Balance, the word Balance, or you click on the amount there, the next screen that would present would be the account activity pages on Touchnet. The account activity pages give you the complete semester breakdown. So you can see all the debits and credits that have posted for that particular term. So we have a lot of parents that will go out there and use those pages, especially around tax time, if they're trying to prepare to go to their tax, to meet with their tax accountant. But those pages are out there, and it is a great tool to utilize for parents or students when they're wanting to see what exactly was charged or paid during a particular term. Underneath that, we'll have statements. If you click View Statements, the next page would display any statement that's ever generated for the student account. That information does not go away. It's there for life. So if you want to see something that generated during your freshman year and you're in your senior year, you can go out there and you can see what was assessed and billed during that very first term that you attended. Underneath that, you'll see where we have the 1090 AT statements. That's the tax statement that the university provides. Those always go out around the end of January. And that is also an email notification that would go out to the student and also to any additional authorized access member around the end of January each year. So just be watching for those. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see where you're able to, Touchnet is also where you're able to manage your direct deposit. You can set up payment profiles if you want to have a saved payment profile, so you're not having to go out and input in payment details each month. And you're able to view refund status and those types of things. Understanding your monthly statement. So this is just sort of an example of what you can expect to see on the billing statement. So in the upper right-hand corner, it will provide the date that the invoice was generated. It will have the adjusted amount due and the minimum payment and the due date. Now, the adjusted amount due is going to be whatever your charges are on your student account minus any anticipated aid that you're expected to receive. And then the minimum payment is going to be determined on how many payments we still have left within that term. And it's going to be, so like for this first fall bill, we have 4 payments. So it's going to take your adjusted amount due and it's going to divide that amount by 4. And that's what it's going to arrive at for the minimum payment amount in that field. Now, the minimum payment is the only area that you can view the minimum payment amount is the actual PDF of the bill. So just be aware of that. If you're on Touchnet and you go to the make payment screens, you're not going to see that minimum payment amount reflected there. So if you're wanting to pay the minimum payment amount, you're going to need to go out and click on the actual PDF of the bill to get that minimum payment amount and then input that amount for the payment amount in the payment screen. Underneath academic related activity, the items that will reflect there are going to be your tuition related charges. Room and board is going to be, room and board, dining plan charges, those types of things. And then anticipated aid. What would reflect under other charges is going to be bookstore charges, parking permits, parking violations. Those types of things would be reflected in other charges. And as Bridget said earlier, anticipated aid, on that very first statement, your aid is going to reflect under anticipated aid. By that next billing statement, the majority of the aid is going to cycle from anticipated and show up under payments and credits. So if you're hitting about the second or third bill and you're still seeing items show up as anticipated and not under payments and credits, that's a good cue to reach out to us or to the financial aid office to see if there's some action that needs to be completed on the student side to get that aid to pay to the student account. So just be aware of watching for those things whenever you hit about the second or third bill to call us and we can try to help walk you through if there's any issues with that. Payment options, you can either pay on Touchnet, you can pay with either an e-check or with a credit card. We do recommend the e-check over the credit card. The credit card does impose a 2.85% convenience fee in addition to the amount that you're paying. So just be aware of that. So that we definitely recommend the e-check over the credit card. It is completely free to do the e-check. You also are more than welcome to mail in a payment. If you mail in a payment, please make sure to include the student ID number on the payment. We do have a lot of students with similar names, so just having that extra detail really helps us in ensuring that that payment gets applied to the correct account. We also have a drop box outside the cashier office that you can drop off payments to us there, or you can drop a payment off at the cashier window during our open window hours. You are welcome to do that also. And if you're going to be mailing in you can mail in a personal check, money order, cashier's check, any of those are perfectly fine. Just please make sure to include that student ID number on that. Otherwise, it's a problem for us to try to determine which student it belongs to. If you're going to choose to do the online payment, then the student just simply has to go to Student Center, click on Financial Account, and then proceed to Touchnet. Once you complete those actions, you should land on this page within Touchnet. You just have to click on Make a Payment where it's circled there. And then in the middle of the screen, you'll hit Make a Payment on that little Make Payment button. After you do that, the next screen should be this. It's going to have you've got payment options there. Now, we get a lot of phone calls about the payment options because we have a lot of parents that will get to this point, or students that will get to this point and say, which button do I need to pick on the payment options? Do I need to do current account balance, current statement amount, amount due, future amount due? It really, honestly, it doesn't matter which one of those you choose. Our system is set up to take that payment and it's going to apply it to the oldest charges on the student account. So really the purpose of that button is to, if you want to click one of those amounts, it will import that amount into that payment total. So you're not having to enter in the actual numeric amount into that field box. When you get to that point, don't get held up on believing that you have to select a certain one or you're going to make it go to a semester that you don't want it to go to. Because on our side, we're going to take that payment, we're going to apply it to the oldest charges first. So you can click on any of those, and then when you get into that payment field box, you can edit that amount to either reflect what is viewed in one of those above boxes, or you can change it to match the minimum payment amount if you wish to do that instead of the adjusted amount due or current amount. One big benefit if you choose to do the electronic payment is you're going to have a receipt. If you mail in a payment, the only way that you know that the university has received that payment is by logging on to Touchnet and viewing the account activity, or seeing the statement the next month and seeing the posting of that payment to the student account that way. But if you make an actual e-check payment or a credit card payment through Touchnet, you will actually get an emailed formal receipt such as this for you to keep track of on your side for your own records. So that is one big bonus in making an electronic payment as opposed to mailing in a payment to our office. Additional authorized access. So to do additional authorized access, you just have to the student has to go on to Joe's. They're going to select additional authorized access and third-party FERPA release, and they're just going to follow those prompts to be able to set up that access. Whenever they follow the prompts and set up the access, it's going to send an email to the individual that they've designated the access to. That email contains a link, and they're able to set up their own single sign-on into the system to be able to view whatever information the student has allowed that particular person to view. With the additional authorized access, the students do have the ability to determine what that person can see. They can either have them be able to have student account information, academic information, directory, financial aid. So that student does have the ability to determine what that person is able to see. So just realize that if you feel like your access is limited, it's probably because the student has limited that access. So if you want anything changed with that, that would have to be a communication you would have to have with your student if you feel like something is missing from your access. So just be aware of that. To grant the access, they just have to go to additional authorized access and log into Joe's and navigate to that personal information tile and select information privacy from the left side menu, and then select additional authorized access. And then just follow the prompts. And like I said earlier, it'll send an email communication to that person for them to be able to create their own single sign-on into Joe SS. Now, one added thing that we have on the cashier side is for you to be able to view Touchnet as a third-party company. So for the parents to be able to have to view the billing, to get the billing statements, things like that, you have to grant even further additional authorized access with Touchnet. So if you just grant the additional authorized access within Joe's, that's all they're going to have view of, is just simply whatever is present in Joe's. It's not going to give them the access they need to proceed to Touchnet. So there is additional access that you're going to have to grant that individual within Touchnet. And you're going to follow the same pathway you do in Joe's to get to view your billing. You're just going to be going to the student center, the financial account tile, proceed to Touchnet. Once you're on the Touchnet homepage, on the right-hand side, you'll be clicking on Authorized Users and just following through those prompts to set up an authorized user within Touchnet. So if you're setting up somebody for the first time and you're setting up the additional authorized access in Joe's, and then you're going ahead and setting up that access within Touchnet, that's going to prompt two different communications to that person. So you may want to let that person know to be aware to do both emails and not think that they're both the same thing, because it is two different accesses that are being granted to two different operating systems. Once your student has set you up with that AAA account, you'll receive that email, and you just follow through and set up that password that you want to have. Now, I do just want to make sure that whenever you're setting up that access, just absolutely make sure that you're setting up that access within Touchnet. We do have a lot of families, the students that will set up that access within Joe's, but never follow through with that setting up the access within Touchnet. So that parent, especially when it comes to that first bill, they'll believe that, oh, we set up the access within Joe's, we're good to go, and we'll generate that first bill. The student will get the email notification, but the parent won't, and the parent will believe, well, we've already set up that access. But then when we get to digging in deeper into the account, we can see where that access was never granted within Touchnet. So please, if you want to receive that first billing notification, make sure that the student has completed those actions by next week to ensure that you receive those same communications that we'll be sending out next week when that first billing statement runs. And one additional thing that I want to talk with the additional authorized access, when a student logs in, they're able to go under Access Joe's sign-in area and log in there. For the additional authorized access members, if you attempt to log in where the single sign-on is for the students, it's going to come up with an authentication error, and it's not going to let you to proceed. So to be able to ensure that, you're either going to need that you're clicking in and trying to log in as an additional authorized access user, you need to make sure that you're clicking under guest access, or you're clicking in one of the links provided in our billing notification emails, or any of the communications that you're receiving from our office. If you click on those links, it should take you to the proper sign-in area. So just be aware of that. And if you're having any issues locating the right one, you can always contact our office, and we can help walk you through those steps to get you to the right location so that you're able to sign in properly. So student refunds, another big job of our office is issuing the student refunds. As Bridget said, financial aid will start dispersing about 10 days prior to the semester starting. On the cashier side for the fall term, we're going to start issuing out refunds August 14th. So just be aware that that's when we'll start issuing refunds on our side. Now, what we recommend is that direct deposit gets set up on Touchnet. If you have direct deposit information stored for the student would sign into their account, set up direct deposit. There also is the option to set up direct deposit under additional authorized access for any, if there's any refunds that are issued off of direct Parent Plus loans. Those refunds can go as the parent directed. So do realize that you have the ability to do that on Touchnet too under the additional authorized access login. But we do recommend direct deposit. We have a lot of issues with refunds going to wrong addresses, trying to chase down lost checks. It just can be rather time consuming, especially when a person is probably needing that money to maybe pay for off-campus housing. So just be aware of that. If you set up that direct deposit, then usually most people will have that money in their bank account within 3 to 5 days of us issuing it. Where if you're waiting, if you don't set up direct deposit, the default is for us to issue a check. That check actually doesn't even go through our hands here in Rolla. It actually is printed and sent out from system out of Columbia. and it goes to the address that's on the student account. So if, say that it went to a wrong address or it got lost, we have to wait 30 days from the original date that check was issued before we can void and issue a replacement. So that can cause quite a problem in the timeline of you getting those monies and being able to pay whatever you're needing to pay on your side. So we definitely recommend setting up that direct deposit. It is a lot faster and more seamless process in receiving those funds. So definitely recommend doing that. And when we start issuing refunds on the 14th, we will be doing refunds daily all the way through the month of August and through the first week of September, trying to make sure everybody's getting money in a timely fashion. To set up direct deposit, that's another thing that you're going to be doing, completing an action on Touchnet. They're going to be going to the Student Center on Joe, so go to Student Center, Financial Account, and then underneath the Finance section that proceed to Touchnet. Once you're on Touchnet, on the right-hand screen, you're going to be setting up a payment profile. The payment profile, once you set it up, it'll ask, there's a little check mark that you'll have to do to set it up as a refund account. And as you check that, then that will allow that account to be set up for any type of refunds that we would issue off of that student account. And as I said earlier, if you're an additional authorized access member and there's any type of Parent Plus loans that you're receiving and there's any refunds coming off of that, the parents have the ability to set up a refund account for those monies also. So that about wraps it up. I will say that both of our offices are located within Parker Hall. We're right across the hall from each other, so it makes it relatively easy because we usually will be talking to students back and forth across the hall quite often. The Cashier's Office does have some more limited hours, window hours, face-to-face hours than what the Financial Aid Office does. Our window hours are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 12 to 3. So just be aware of that. If for whatever reason you're needing to talk to us and it's outside those hours, you can call us, you can email us, and we can still try to set up a time. If you're outside in the hallway, we'll definitely still bring you in and have a discussion with you face to face if that's needed. So feel free to reach out to us. And I believe at this point, we're going to be opening it up to some questions that have been coming through the chat.
Yes. Okay. So Ashley Curley, Director of Undergrad Admissions, here again to help facilitate our question and answer portion of this evening. So we do have quite a few questions, so let's just hop into that first one. So our first question received was, do the different tuition tier costs only come into play after freshman year? As an example, my out-of-state son is majoring in engineering. So would the tuition be $30,400 or $34,400?
So if your student is a freshman, if they're under that, if they're 30 hours and under, okay, they're going to get that first semester is going to always be that freshman rate. If they've hit that 30-hour mark by the time the second term rolls around, then they're going to bump up into whatever degree plan that they've chosen, whatever that amount is. Now, for the engineer, I know that the amounts that you're providing in your question are more based off of the estimates I think financial aid put out. But if you go out to the Cashier website at cashier.mst.edu, we do have undergraduate tuition fee schedules out there that will show what you can expect for the plateau rate for the freshmen, and you'll be able to compare that plateau rate for the freshman to the rate 3 that they would be having as an engineering student. So you can sort of see that cost difference there in a one screen if you're wanting to do that. But yeah, if the student if it's an incoming student and they're under that 30-hour mark for the entire freshman year, then they're going to have that freshman rate their first and second semester.
Well, thank you, Caitlin.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on to our next question. I am an L1 visa dependent student, parentheses L2 visa holder. Miss Crystal helped me understand I will be a resident in terms of the Missouri state residency. but due to my L2 status, I cannot have a social security number. I would need help to understand which is the best way to get financial aid, as I'm desperate.
So the financial aid that you're probably going to be offered, Ashley, I don't know if you can help me out with the visa statuses at all, but my guess is that you would not be eligible for federal aid with that particular visa status. And so in that case, you probably received an international scholarship. So that's what you received as an automatic merit. And then you do have the ability to log into scholarships.mst.edu and peruse the scholarships that we have either in the financial aid office or through the academic departments to help find additional funding. Now, generally those scholarships usually are maybe $1,000 to $2,000, so it may not cover your full cost. I would encourage you to reach out to the financial aid office and we can direct you in the way of maybe some private loan options if you're interested in that to maybe help cover the difference there. But please reach out to our office so we can look at your account specifically.
All right. Thank you, Bridget. Next question is, how do we use our Missouri 529 plan to make payments for tuition and books, etc.?
Okay. So for that, what they're going to have to do is you're going to have to provide that billing. Usually the 529s will require some type of documentation. For my communication with the families, they usually will present them the billing statement that we generate to be able to get the funds out of that 529 account. And once you've requested that from the 529, then the 529 will cut a check to the university and send it to us in the mail. I do want to make a note that the 529 process, from the time that you initiate that request with the 529, it takes about 2 weeks before we actually receive that payment. So just be aware of the timing of when you're submitting that request to ensure that you're meeting that billing due date.
Thank you. Next question is the FAFSA available for international students?
Typically, no. You have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen in order to complete that free application for federal student aid. This is where I would most likely point you to scholarships.mst.edu and then any private loan options that might be available to you.
And I also just want to let you know, as these amazing ladies are rattling off all of these URLs, I am typing them and placing them into the chat.
Thank you.
All right, next question. If someone doesn't qualify for a scholarship coming in their freshman year, can they qualify later based on their work at S&T?
No. So our automatic merit scholarships that we offer at the time of admission is only available to those who are incoming students. Students generally will get additional scholarships, though, as they get into their major and they get into their program of study, and those would all be in that scholarships.mst.edu, so that scholarship database. But the automatic merits are for incoming students only.
Thank you. All right, next question is, what is the middle income range for Access Missouri?
So, if you file a FAFSA, it right now generates an estimated financial
contribution.
The FAFSA is changing and the EFC is going away, so I've got lots of other acronyms in my head. So the EFC on the FAFSA determines what kind of federal and state aid a student is eligible for. Generally, for a Pell Grant, your EFC would have to be less than 6,700 roughly. And for Access Missouri, it actually goes up to 12,000. So when you file the FAFSA, your EFC is 12,000 or less, you may qualify if you're a Missouri resident.
Excellent. The next question is, our son will be using the GI Bill to pay for tuition for his first 2 semesters. We have been told that the VA routinely pays the university late after your deadline. And sometimes auto-generated emails, phone calls, and mailings will be sent by your department saying that the student will be disenrolled for non-payment. We are just making sure that you're aware that GI Bill payments for tuition may be paid by the VA after your deadline.
Yeah, so the VA payments for the fall term generally come in around October. We are aware that the VA certifications don't usually get submitted to the VA until the first week of classes and then continue on through the first month of courses. So the timing of those payments being sent to the institution, yeah, it's later into the term. So we are well aware of that. What we recommend, if your student's using the GI Bill benefits, if they contact our office, we can put a special service indicator on their account. And what that service indicator notes is that there's the expectation of the GI Bill benefits that are going to be coming in, but it also will put a hold on any of those non-payment email communications that may be going out to students. So if you call our office, we can get that special indicator put on your account to keep you from getting pulled into all those communications.
Excellent, thank you. And will the loan amount of $5,500 be available each year if it's not taken that first year?
So each year you do have to file the FAFSA, and then the amount that you're eligible for that upcoming year is based on that FAFSA information. So if you do not use the $5,500, you do not get to use that specific $5,500 the next year. When you file your FAFSA, whatever your academic level is for that year is what you're going to be offered. So $5,500 is the dependent freshman amount. Then it goes up to $6,500, and then for sophomore, and then $7,500 for junior and senior. As a dependent student, the maximum that you can receive is $31,000 total over all those years. And so if you don't use it your freshman year, you would maybe be able to use it if you stay longer than 4 years. You might have then some eligibility in the last year.
Thank you. All right, and how can we apply for university loans?
So if we had funds available at the time that we packaged, it should have already been included in your financial aid offer. However, if you would like to reach out to the financial aid office, usually the university loans are offered as a last resort. Because they are smaller, usually they're between $5,000 and $2,000. So usually if you have a large gap, that's not something that we would necessarily recommend. But reach out to your financial aid counselor and talk to them about those options.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and is the direct student loan disclosed on a student's bill?
Yeah, if you have been offered you filed the FAFSA and you were offered a subsidized or unsubsidized loan, or maybe you have as a parent have applied for a Parent Plus loan, which is also a direct loan. If you accept those loans, then they will show up on the bill. So if you do know that you're going to have to borrow the subsidized and unsubsidized loan, for example, you'll want to accept it sometime this week before the bill is generated next week, so that it shows up as anticipated aid and reduces the amount that you owe.
Thank you. The next question is, I just paid my enrollment fee. Does that mean I have been given an automatic scholarship?
No, your enrollment fee is to pay for your advising and registration and your and pays to get you onboarded onto campus. It does not necessarily correlate to your scholarship. If you have applied for admission and submitted test scores and your GPA and they qualify for an automatic merit, you should have already been considered. If you do not have an automatic scholarship and you want to find out maybe if that's a possibility, reach out to the financial aid office and we will look at your account for you.
Perfect, thank you. What if we didn't receive the financial aid letter in the mail and filed for FAFSA?
In that case, I would encourage the student to check in Joe's in the financial aid awarded section to see if there is financial aid out there. If there's not, there might be something in the to-do center or the to-do list of things that students maybe need to complete before we can offer them financial aid. So those are two things to look at. Also in Joe's, there's a message center where we keep every communication that we send out of Joe's from the financial aid office. There's a copy that the student can find. Maybe it didn't make it to you in the mail for whatever reason. If we did generate one, that letter will be in the message center as well. And if you contact us, we can also send you another one.
All right, thank you. And when will the initial bill be dispersed on the student's Joe's account for the upcoming fall 2023 semester?
We'll be generating that first billing statement next week. Tentatively, we're scheduled to do it on Monday, but if there's any hiccups or issues, it could be middle to end of next week. So just be aware it's supposed to happen next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin.
Uh-huh.
And if your student is trying to get into a fraternity house their first semester, freshman year, but isn't in by the start of the term, and they are required to live on campus, so they go ahead and they get a dorm. How does that work if he gets into the frat house during the semester? And are those residential costs prorated?
Yeah, so if the student is able to get into a fraternity, then what will happen, there's a bid card, I think, that you provide the residential life office to be able to get out of the on-campus housing. At that time, if the student has stayed in the dorms for any duration of time, residential life will do a proration of the time that they spent in the dorms and will make that adjustment on the student account. And if the parent or family has already made a payment against those dorm charges, and then they're reduced or removed fully, and it creates a credit on the account, then we will process out a refund against any credit that's been created.
Thank you. All right. You mentioned applying for a waiver for a Parent Plus loan for 4 years. Is that true for all other loans also?
So any loan that's going to be considered a student loan, so it's going to be in the student's name, that they're the borrower and they're going to repay it, is usually going to be automatically deferred until 6 months after the student graduates or drops below half-time. Now, if you're going with a private lender, they may have different criteria, but generally it's 6 months after you drop below half-time or graduate, whichever comes first. For the parent loans, it's in the parent's name. It is a little bit more restrictive. Usually, if you don't do anything when you apply for the plus loan, that you're going to start repaying on it as soon as it is completely dispersed for that year or the semester, whichever one you apply for. I think the repayment starts like 30 days after the full disbursement. You can request it to be deferred, though, up to 4 years, as long as the student remains half-time during those 4 years.
Thank you. My son's Mo S&T email isn't working. Who can we contact?
I would say probably IT. You can find more information at it.mst.edu.
All right. And are you going to be sending the slideshow out for future reference?
Yes, we will send it to all attendees here tonight. And we also have a copy. So if anybody was not able to join us tonight and you want to make sure that they get that too, please refer them to the financial aid office, sfa@mst.edu, and we can email that to them as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And when would the student need to sign the MPN, so the master promissory note by? Can he still sign that when he's under the age of 18?
Yes, for federal student loans, that age, I believe the minimum maybe is 13, but we really don't have any students by that young. But even though that they're under the age of 18, they're going to an institution of higher education, so they are able to sign it themselves. That master promissory note, in order for that loan to be dispersed, it needs to be completed before that loan can be dispersed. So if you remember, our first disbursement is August 11th for the fall. So they need to complete that MPN sometime between now and August 11th. August 10th, we get it 1 day later.
Thank you. And who should we contact if a Mo S&T scholarship has not yet been applied?
That would be the financial aid office, and you can reach us at sfa@mst.edu. I do encourage you, any communications you do have with our office, we would like you to provide the student's 8-digit IMPL ID or student ID number. That way we make sure that we are looking up the right student.
Can you still apply for the Parent Plus loan for the spring semester if we don't apply for it now?
Yes, absolutely. You can apply at any point and for any term. So if you just wanted to apply for fall or just wanted to apply for spring, you can certainly do so as we get closer. It is a credit-based loan, so I do encourage you, if you do know that you're going to borrow it for both fall and spring, that you just borrow the full year at one time. So it's one credit check for that year. You would just take what you are borrowing for the fall and double it for the spring.
Will Bright Flight Awards show up automatically?
If we received your official test score from ACT or SAT at the time of admission from the testing agency, and it qualified you for Bright Flight, then it should already be on there. If you did not send us your official test scores, maybe it was self-reported, it is probably not on your award. I would encourage you to reach out to the financial aid office, and what we will do is we will contact the state of Missouri to make sure that they have that information so that we can put that award on for you. But yeah, it should have already been on at this point.
And what about scholarships from personal sources?
If you have a private scholarship that came from an outside donor, those all need to come to the financial aid office, and you can find our address in the email we sent you this week. Plus, you can find that on our website as well. Please make sure you put the 8-digit student ID number on it so that we can credit the right account. In the meantime, you can report it in Joe's so that it shows up as private scholarship number 12345, and we'll reduce your bill.
How does my son grant access to his account so we can send Mo 529 funds, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the Missouri MOST program, the 529, you're going to be just submitting that bill to them, and then that they can cut a check to the university. There is also a way to send with Missouri MOST. There's also a way to send payment electronically. And you can do that by going on to Touchnet, and you go through Flywire MOST, and you can submit those payments electronically that way. Now, the question sort of makes it out to be maybe you're trying to grant access to Mo 529. We do have sometimes where people will grant additional authorized access to people that are like handling their accounts. Like a financial account, that's perfectly fine. You can grant access to whoever you want. We do have that happen. So if you want to do that, you just have to follow the same method that you would if you were setting it up for a parent or a spouse or that type of thing.
Thank you. At open house on November 11th, 2023, the cost for tuition was $9,266. Now it's $13,000 and $17,000 for an engineering degree. How did it jump so much?
So prior to our new tuition model, we charged per credit hour, and it was tuition and supplemental course fees. So the tuition may have been $9,200 if that's what it was at that point, but there was also a supplemental course fee estimate. So depending on what classes a student took, there was an additional charge, and engineering classes had an additional charge per credit hour, for example. And so on the website, we used to post a tuition amount and a supplemental course fee amount as well, in addition to required fees. So they were all broken out. So you might have only saw $9,200 in tuition, but there was also supplemental course fees. Now that we're on this new tuition model, it's much clearer, and it's all kind of rolled into one. And so that's why if you had added those two up in the past, you might have seen it was closer to what we show now. Also, we are governed by the University of Missouri Board of Curators, and they don't approve our tuition until usually the end of May, beginning of June each year. And so depending on, you came in November, at that point that we had not considered what our tuition was going to be for fall 23. It was only an estimate.
Thank you. My son has his advisor call after July 15th. Will his first bill be in September?
So it just sort of depends on when the student, when the charges appear on the account. if the student is enrolling and talking to that advisor in the class, getting into classes after that first statement generation, then the bill for that particular student wouldn't actually get captured until the September generation. So it's just a matter of timing. With it being July 15th, it's probably already going to be there by the time we run the bills next week. So I'd say that the due date's going to be the August 10th. But if that enrollment information is not on the account at that point in time, then it would be captured in the September bill, and the first payment would be due by October 10th. Or September 10th, sorry.
Yeah, it would be August 15th to
Yeah,
September 10th.
it'd be September 10th instead of
Okay.
the August 10th due date.
Thank you. You mentioned that bills are sent out around the 15th and due on the 10th. Is the tuition broke down into payments for all students?
The tuition, so it's depending upon how many payments are left within that particular term. So for the fall, there's 4. So this very first statement is going to show it's going to take that adjusted amount due and divide it by 4. And that's what the minimum payment amount will be arrived at. And it will continue to follow that pattern and then that very last bill is going to be whatever is still outstanding is going to be captured at that point. And for the spring, it's also 4 payments, and for the summer, it's 3 payments. And that's all reflected on the PDF of the bill each month.
All right. And Caitlin, I think this is another one for you. What is the 1098T statement? Acknowledgement of payment for educational expenses?
So the 1098T statement is the tax statement that the university provides. So it's something that we have to provide, but it's not necessarily something that the families have to use when they're filing their taxes. It's just something that we as an institution have to provide to the student. Some use it, some don't, but basically the 1098T statement will give a breakdown of all the qualifying tuition and expenses at that payments that went towards qualifying tuition and expenses. And it will also, in another box, provide scholarships and grants that were received towards those same types of qualifying tuition and expenses.
Thank you. Are there penalties for paying only the minimum payment instead of the full payment?
Yes, if you choose to pay the minimum payment, then you will have a 1% finance charge that will accrue on the carried balance to the next statement.
Okay, and we received this next question a couple different times. Are debit cards allowed for paying student bills?
Yeah, you can pay with a debit card on Touchnet. It's not going to process it as a debit transaction. It's going to process it as a credit card transaction. So just be aware of that. So when you make it with that way, it's going to, if you use the actual debit card numbers, it's going to process it as a credit card. It's going to impose that 2.85% convenience fee. That debit card should be associated with the checking account. So what I would recommend instead is choosing the e-check option and entering in the routing number and the account number for that checking account as opposed to the debit card numbers. And that way you can get around the convenience fee.
Okay, and you kind of alluded to this, Caitlin, but I'm going to ask it just in case there's any additional details you want to add. How do I pay with an e-check?
Yeah, so when you go on to Touchnet, you're just going to select that e-check option. And it's just going to ask you to provide the routing number and the account number for that checking account.
Excellent, thank you. And can even international students pay with a debit card?
You can. We do have some issues with some of those international cards working and processing right. So just be aware of that. It's not all, it's just hit or miss, I think, really just depending upon the provider of that card. If you run into issues when you're trying to make that payment, feel free to call our office and we can troubleshoot and try to figure out if we can help you get the payment to go through. And if not, then we'll figure out an alternative.
Excellent. Do you have any financial aid that will help pay for a registration fee?
No, the financial aid can only be applied to items that are being applied to the bill first, and not the origin or the registration fee, which is assessed prior to that bill.
Thank you. Okay, and we already went over our e-check payment. What is the cutoff for the third-party scholarships to be received for? What is the cutoff for third-party scholarships to be received to count towards that first semester?
We will apply it however the donor would like us to, as soon as we get it. So if you don't get it until maybe November, we'll still apply to the fall if the donor, or if they don't say anything. If you want to apply to the fall, we will apply it then. But the sooner the better, because the first payment again will be due August 10th.
In this question, the student has found themselves in a very awesome position. What will happen if your scholarship money exceeds the cost?
Yeah, so what will happen is once all those funds actually pay out to the student account and it creates a credit, then on the cashier side, we're going to process out a refund to that student. So just be aware that that refund will be made out to the student. It'll be in the student's name. It'll go to the student's direct deposit that they've set up. So just be aware of that, because we do have a lot of families that will want to know where it's going to be directed. It's always going to be made out to the student unless it's coming from a Parent Plus loan.
Thank you. Can students wait to take the subsidized student loans mid-semester or before school begins?
You can certainly wait. We don't want you to borrow anything that you're not going to need. So let's say you don't need it for the fall, but you might need it for the spring. When spring gets here, you can choose to borrow it at that point. You might just have to contact us if it's not still out there available for you. But we usually don't cancel anything. As long as you're half time, it's going to sit out there as an offer, and then you'll just accept it when you need it. Just know that if you accept a loan after the fall semester is over for the fall semester, there are a few stipulations that we have to follow in order to allow that to happen. It's not impossible, but it does. There are some additional steps we need to take. So if you are going to need it for the fall, you will want to accept it sometime in the fall.
Thank you. We haven't seen a bill yet, so we don't know necessarily how much to take out for a loan from one of the preferred lenders from your list. So do you have any recommendations in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can absolutely wait until you receive the bill, because again, we don't want you to borrow more than you really need. But I would caution you not to wait too much longer after you receive the bill to go ahead and do the application. Now, once you have applied and been approved, we typically get it on your account 3 to 5 business days. But if, as you can imagine, we are going to have all of our current students and all of our new students applying for those loans and us getting it processed at the same time. So it may be a little bit more delayed. In order to make sure that it is applied and covers your balance due, you'll want to make sure you get that done as soon as you do get the bill. But yeah, absolutely, you can wait for the bill and you don't necessarily need to apply now. If you do decide to apply now, you could estimate what you think it might be based on the financial aid offer letter we sent you. And if it turns out that you don't need as much as you applied for, we can certainly reduce it for you on your behalf.
Thank you. All right. And can you please re-explain the minimum payment due amount? Is it the minimum amount due, the semester cost divided by 4 automatically, since there are 4 due dates for the fall semester?
Yeah, the system is set up to take the adjusted amount due for that first statement, and it will divide it equally by 4. Now, what could cause the payment to maybe increase by the second or third or fourth is if you are doing the minimum payments, you're going to have that 1% finance charge is going to be getting carried to the next billing statement. So that might make a slight increase on the minimum payment amount. Or if there's any other charges that get posted, like if the student secures a parking permit or has parking violations or bookstore charges get posted, that might make it vary on the second or third or fourth statement. But yeah, the very first statement is going to take that adjusted amount due and it's going to divide it by 4, and that's how it arrives at that minimum payment.
Thank you. And what type of financial aid can result in refunds?
Any type of financial aid generally. Most of our financial aid does can be paid to more than just tuition or housing and dining that's on the bill. Most financial aid can go to things like your personal expenses or transportation or books that may not be on the bill. So in most instances, you're going to find that if you have more financial aid, including scholarships, grants, and loans, that's more than what you have billed, you may get a refund. Now, the one caveat I will point out is if there are any scholarships or specific aid that goes just to tuition or just to on-campus housing, such as the Minor Residence Hall Scholarship, if you receive that, if you do not have those charges, then it will, if everything else is covered, then it cannot be refunded to you because it cannot go to any other charges except for what was on your account. But generally, most financial aid can be refunded to you, no matter what you have.
Why did I receive an email saying the first bill is coming on July 17th if the semester starts in August?
So the first billing statement, well, yeah, it's going to generate next week, and that first payment is due by August 10th. That is just the agreed upon payment plan that the UM system has decided on across all 4 campuses. So that is the expectation. Also too, students are allowed to do like early registration, so they're able to secure spots in classes. So if you do that early registration, you get that special spot in that class that you're wanting, you're going to have that payment due in August. There are some students that aren't as worried about getting into certain classes that may hold off on getting that registration put in to where they have a September due date be the first one instead of August. But if you're getting that registration in early to secure that spot, that first payment for Missouri S&T will be August 10th.
All right, next question. If my engineering student came in with over 30 credit hours, will they jump to tier 3 in their second semester?
Yes, if they're past 30 credit hours, they get the first semester at freshman year or freshman rate, and then the second semester will be based on their major. So if they're engineering, yes, that moves up into that 3rd tier.
Yep.
All right. How does my son grant access to his account so we can send Mo 529 funds?
So yeah, I think we had one similar earlier, but yeah, to grant access, the additional authorized access, you can grant it to anybody. So we have a lot of families that will call and will want to grant access to like a financial advisor. It's open to do that. You can, it's just no different when the student goes in to set up that additional authorized access for a parent. You're just going to follow those prompts and provide that name of that individual along with the contact details, and it will send them that link so that they can create their own single sign-on into the system.
All right, next question is, I was approved for 50% tuition a while ago, but haven't seen it pop up on my account. I would really like to figure things, if my things are paid for. If they're paid for, what qualifies to be refunded from the student? What qualifies to be refunded to the student?
I'm not
I'm a little confused by the question.
Me too. I don't know if that's similar to the last question that we answered about what can be refunded. And then that would be pretty much everything. Once tuition, anything that's on the bill is paid, then it could be refunded generally.
Yes. And if you don't see something on your account and you have questions, you can definitely reach out to SFA. I know I did put their contact email in the chat, but for this individual, I would definitely encourage that they reach out on an individual level. Okay, so I do understand that we have gone over our time for this event, and I appreciate everyone for hanging on with us, and helping us kind of get a lot of these questions out and answered. I'm going to quickly just scan and see if there are any other big questions But I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and provide the answers to the remaining questions that have not necessarily been answered yet via email with a recording. So just making sure that you get all of your information. I would implore Caitlin and Bridget to go ahead and put any contact information for their offices in the chat. But I'm going to quickly scan. One question that was asked a couple of times is, what does the indirect transportation cost for freshmen? Is there some type of a transportation fee?
No, there is not a transportation fee. The transportation and personal expenses, those kind of indirect costs that you see on the letter and on our website, are just estimates of what our students said based on a survey, how much they spend on average on those things. So it just helps you kind of plan for what you might spend while you are an S&T student. So transportation in particular includes 2 trips home each semester and your time around the campus. If you do bring a car and you drive around, not everybody does, but you can certainly to do that, and the cost covers anything transportation. Now, if you live closer, your costs are going to be much smaller. If you don't go home as frequently, it may be smaller. But if you have to fly to get home, it may be a larger cost. So it's really just an average of what our freshmen say they spend.
Okay. And then some additional information based on some of the other questions that I'll just quickly summarize to make sure that we're getting some answers out there. So if, for instance, if you're living in Missouri and you move to another state after you actually start your enrollment here at S&T, that is not going to change your residency. Your residency is actually dictated when you actually start your enrollment at S&T. So that would not change even if you did, for instance, move to Kansas after starting classes here. And then the first bill for the fall semester. So just to reiterate this, just because we did receive quite a few questions, the first bill for the fall semester is due August 10th.
Yes.
So just to reiterate one more time, if you are registered for classes before next week, before the next, before the initial bill is created and pulled, that bill will be due August 10th. If for some reason, if your registration in courses does not occur until after next week, so after that first bill is generated, then your first bill will be due September 10th. Okay, so the 10th is a hot day of the month for us. Okay, so based on this, thank you so much, ladies, for popping your information in there. Please certainly go ahead and jot that information down. If there are any specific scenarios, if we did recommend that you reach out to either of these ladies, please go ahead and do so. Reach out to them. Not only the cashiers and our student financial assistance office, but any of the offices on the S&T campus. We are certainly here to help you and help your onboarding process. And try to streamline it and smooth out any issues that you are encountering, and certainly get you your answers to your questions. So we so much appreciate you joining us this evening. And we are going to be following up with the recording of the video and any answers that we unfortunately ran out of time to answer. So thank you again for joining. And then Caitlin or Bridget, do you have any last comments or salutations for us?
I will just add that we are here to help, as I said at the beginning of the presentation. So please make sure that you get your questions answered sooner rather than later. As we get closer to August 10th, both of our offices become a little bit swamped. And so if you have those questions now, this week would be a great time to start asking those of our office.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. And I hope everyone has the best ever evening tonight.
Thank you, everybody.